Evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. The subliminal messages are on this show. Can anyone work them out? So, what do we think? 7 days and counting to the deadline window closing next Monday. Will Alisana Jata still be a Notts County player? Will Alisana Jata have recovered from his back spasm in time to be named in the squad to face Tranmere away at Prenton Park on Saturday? What are your thoughts? We did a Friday night Magpie Live. Most views seem to be at least offer him a new contract and do your best to get him to sign a new deal. As opposed to us civilians on Friday night, we've got the professional verdict from Mr. Stallard on what he thinks of Jata Gate, or whatever you want to call it. On the pitch, 2-2 Saturday. I think we're all pretty happy at half time, weren't we? A Martin Patterson identity for Notts County. Second half, don't know about you, I was quite pleased we're only 3 or 4 minutes added time as we hung on for a 2-2 draw. What are your thoughts on the start to our season? Builders promotion candidates. It's 1 win in 5 so far. No midweek for us this week, as usual, with a Carabao Cup. We always seem to get knocked out of that. So at least we've got a few days to prepare. Matthew Dennis, top scorer, done very, very well. Again, Mark will give us a fellow striker's critique. Have we got enough centre halves in the building? Do we need another one to be signed? And chatting with Mark before kick-off for tonight's show, he's counted up with a calculator 28 players in our current squad. I think we need to be redistributing, I think would be a polite word to put it, some of the players that aren't currently in Martin Patterson's thinking. It's already a big squad, but we know it's painfully thin when it comes to number 9s, and we haven't got a lot of cover given the injuries we've suffered at centre half. Your thoughts on all of that? Mark, welcome to the programme.
Evening. First name terms, are we? Formal, sounds a bit formal.
I'm used to Mark. Sorry, I'd be very polite.
I was going to say, yeah, it's me Sunday name when I'm in trouble, Mark. Yeah.
Let me just read a quick few selection of the comments, because there's a lot of them. And also, I should say, thank you, as always, to our official partners, JH Accountants and the Big Shed at the Trent Navigation, for all of their support. Roy Smith, we posted the show link a bit earlier today, and he came on at 12:40 p.m. Can't wait for tonight's show. Only 6 hours and 20 minutes to go waiting on this line. Well done, Roy. Jonathan Hammocks, hello, everyone. I saw the first signs of frustration from Martin Patterson on Saturday's post-match interview, not being able to bring on a striker. How come we want promotion? He goes on, I cannot believe we haven't brought in a striker. We've had so much time. I don't want to criticise the brothers, but the silence is deafening, and I can't work out the Jata situation. Stell will be doing his best to try and throw some light on that very shortly, Jonathan. No movement yet, says Richard Terry, on a new striker coming in. I have trawled through all the internet and other social media mediums. Greza Maxwell, bloated on midfield players, extremely thin on the ground up front and between the sticks and the 18-yard box. Not sure there's too much else left on the pitch there, Greza. Richard Terry, he's resent the first message. Andy Easom, evening all. Jody took some punishing treatment on Saturday once again. There must be a concern about his availability for Saturday, as I saw him strapped up and limping quite badly afterwards. Tim Watchorn, good evening. Jata and Dennis would give the opposition something to think about. Evening from John Parnham, hoping for a positive result against Tranmere, although they seem to be a much better side than they were last season, including, and he scored, Charlie Whittaker, who was at Notts from Tranmere. Obviously, I'm sure Tranmere is a great move for him back in his home Merseyside. Evening from David Dawes and from Stephen Newton. Jock Pie. Oh dear, how about Bish co-commentating from now on? Stell's record this season is abysmal. Oh dear me. Oh, Stell.
We've got
Evening from
28
Newark.
players in the squad that can take a bit of blame before me if I'm getting the blame for it.
You're 29 on the list.
Well,
No, maybe
hey, I
30.
wish.
Maybe
I wish.
30 after Roberto Gagliardi. He's quite high up as well.
I'm way down the list.
Evening from Newark. Also, evening from John Gregory. Shane Walker down there are Solent on Sea. Let's hope the team is now starting to gel after the Bromley game. Adam Kent, evening from Newark. Good to see Dennis firing, but looked tired last 20 minutes. Need Jata back as soon as possible. Jamie Connery, evening to all the flock. Looking forward to a tasty run in to the end of the transfer window when Roberto Gagliardi no doubt supports Martin with an additional 3 players. Brackets, bit of sarcasm. Well, I've added the brackets, but I think I get your gist, Jamie. Hello from Karen Knight and from Ian Reynolds. Pythagorean, looking forward. Sorry, hang on. The messages are coming in so fast I can't get through them. Pythagorean, first half versus Bromley, probably the best football we have played this season. Wouldn't disagree. On a par, I thought, with Newport the first 45. Second half, we lost possession too easily and got suckered into their long ball game. Lippy Jane, winner of the shirt, I saw you on Saturday, didn't I? Evening, everyone. Only here for a short while. The Knots shirt looks fabulous. What I won. Evening from Jurgen Halligan, Bud Chatwin. Matty Dennis will score more goals for Notts this season than Jata. You have heard it here first. Okay, let's take a little bit of a break. Still, I guess the biggest story, and let's talk the biggest story because it's the first time we've had a chance with you in the studios. Alisana Jata. First things first, let's put you on the spot. Will he be in the squad Saturday or not?
I have no idea. I literally, well, let's be honest. Look, we know what we're going to talk about. We know it's the main talking point. But what we do have to sort of say is that, as far as we're aware, it's a back spasm. He is injured, right? Up until we know anything different.
Of course.
Now, the rhetoric of Martin's interview last week, when he mentioned about it, when it first came to light, the thing that really sent alarm bells out was with a back spasm. I think people of a certain age, we've all had a back spasm at some point, but they can come and go in 24 hours. When it was announced, there was absolutely no mention of the chance or possibility that he was going to be hopefully okay to be in the squad, available, maybe even on the bench for the Saturday game. Now, that's the first bit that sent a bit of an alarm bell to me. Now, but again, we can't speak about Alisana personally because we don't know his situation. So what I'll speak about is the football side of things, of what might happen in this scenario with a player wanting a move. Not necessarily Jata, but a player. It's happening with Isak, isn't it, in the Premier League at the minute?
Yes.
And it's happened multiple times up and down the divisions in a transfer window. So if a player wants a move, what are some of the modern day tactics? And don't, for 1 second, when I explain this, mean I back it, I think it's the way forward. This is my interpretation of what just is in the modern game. Aided and abetted by football agents to get players a move. What can you do if a club isn't willing to sell you? And there will be conversations being had way before now, way before it gets public, about player wants to move, player doesn't want to move. Does the player want to sign a new contract? Yes, no. The club will know this sort of information. So what can happen if a player wants to move and the club either don't think they're getting the value for him, don't think they can get a replacement for him, don't want to sell, literally don't want to sell, that's when a player could not go on strike, as we've seen happen. Pierre Van Hooijdonk all them years ago refused to play, all that sort of stuff, But now it's almost a cuter form of it is throwing in an injury that can sort of not necessarily be shown up and detected easily or whatever. And basically, there's been other podcasts where it's been mentioned about basically try and force a move. It's a game of bluff, or it can become a game of bluff. between the club and the player going, well, or the agent on behalf of the player, who basically wants to say, look, if you don't sell him, who's to say my player isn't going to have an injury for the next 3 months, 6 months, year? So why don't you cash in on him while you can? Otherwise you risk losing him for nothing or reduced fee or whatever at the end of the season. Now, again, that is, unfortunately, that can be the way of the world in football. And we were debating it off air, weren't we? We were saying about it, and we can have the conversation for other people here, because I'm sure other people will have the same sort of questions for me of going, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we offer him a contract, or why don't we do whatever? And again, I'm saying it's not necessarily this is how it's going to unfold with Alisana. Hopefully, it is just a back spasm, and he's available Saturday, and this is all pie in the sky. But this is how it could happen in football. There are two sides to every story, and agents who want to force a move for a player, and players who want that move or back their agent or will go with their agent. Players can dig their heels in unbelievably, and it becomes a real game of bluff and a game of chicken almost, to see who dares take it the furthest and who's got the most to lose potentially. And it's up for debate, and it depends on the player and it depends on the club's circumstances as to what ultimately happens. But unfortunately, with the way things tend to be in the modern world and the modern game, should I say, the balance of power generally falls down on the side of the player. But like I say, we'll see. But we can run through a few scenarios if you want to throw them at me.
Yeah. Okay. So, firstly, I think we need to try and understand as best we can. Some people have been saying the club perhaps have an option on his services, so it's not mega urgent in terms of protecting your transfer value. Look, I've looked back, and at the time, the club published a statement saying that it was a 2.5 year contract, which would take him through to next summer. And no one has seen, or the club have not issued anything further to that to suggest that his contract isn't up at the end of the season. So you're clearly looking to protect your transfer value here. If these conversations have been had with Alisana, if there are opportunities, how do you explain the club? And this kind of ties in with Martin Patterson's. I think it was clear for all to see frustration in the excellent interview, as always, with Adam Hassel afterwards, where Martin has said more or less from day one, we need more pieces on the board. He's used phrases like everybody knows where we need to strengthen, and in more recent times he's become more direct. We've only got one striker. I can't do any more. We've only got one striker, one number 9. So how has the club allowed itself, knowing that Jata was suspended for 5 games? We didn't know till middle of July. Martin Patterson's had to say it in an after-match press conference in Germany. The club would have known by the end of May he's out for 5 games. How would you explain a multitude of wing-backs, a multitude of midfielders, yet literally, in the eyes of your own manager that arrived here on first week of July, we've only got one number 9 who will be available for the first 5 games of this season, whatever happened, irrespective of Alisana being available without a back spasm on game 6.
Yeah, there could be a multitude of reasons, and maybe a bit of oversight might be one. Budget constraints, because strikers, number 9s, your goal scorers, are the most expensive jigsaw piece out there. Possibly about the setup, how we're going to play. Bearing in mind, for as long as I can remember, the last couple of seasons, we've only played with one out-and-out striker most of the time. So they may think, do you know what, Matty Dennis coming in, Jata, okay, we miss him for the first 5 games. Then you look at, maybe they think my Traore is going to come good. Maybe they back Jaden Luca or somebody, Mas Kuyar, one of the new signings, to be able to fill that role certainly for the first 5 games, at least. I don't know. Is the honest answer, but I'd like to think that conversations were had, and the club would have known where they stand. But what also you have to do as well, from a club's point of view, and this is why Martin Patterson's frustrated. You can sense the frustration he's got. But the louder Notts County shout, and be that Martin, be that anybody from the club officially, the louder that you shout, we are desperate for a number 9. We are desperate for at least one goal scorer, maybe two. Anybody who's got a goal scorer that Notts inquire about, the price goes up, the wages go up, and the demands go up because we know how desperate you are. Think about anything you buy. If you're buying a house or what, you fall in love with it, you let everybody know you love it, or a car. You're not then in a great negotiating position to try and get a few quid off, are you? So again, it's playing the game. Unfortunately, it's having to play the game behind closed doors. The conversations between Martin, the technical board, I would like to think are robust in terms of what he feels he's missing, but that will stay in house because you can't have a head coach coming out too much and saying, well, we've got 4 strikers, but I only think one of them's decent. And you backhanded compliments, sort of slapping down the squad, the other members of the squad, saying, hold on a minute, I think I'm a number 9, but he's saying we've only got one, and I think it's pretty obvious to us all who that one is at the minute, with Matty Dennis having an unbelievable week himself. So we know exactly who the head coach is talking about. So it can work both ways. If you come out and be absolutely honest in public, it can backfire spectacularly in terms of, like I say, the minute not showing interest, and they will be interested, I'm sure, in 2, 3, 4, let's call them centre forwards, whatever you want to call them. They will be making contact with them, and it might have to go down to the wire because the nature of strikers who can score goals, they will be wanted. They'll have options. They'll be assessing their options. They'll be trying to squeeze a few quid more out of everybody, playing them all off, not wanting to sign too early because of the domino effect of one player moving, or somebody being allowed out on loan, whatever it might be. Um, it is a game of poker. It really is a game of bluff and playing your hand as best as you can. And you might want to come out and be honest for all the fans, and that's what fans want. But by doing so and putting it out in the public domain, sometimes you weaken your own hand. So I hope that's the case, and I hope we just have to, it's 7 o'clock next Monday, and the window closes. So by the time next Monday we're sat here, the window, we're hoping, going, well, better late than never, but we're reasonably pleased with the business that we've done, I hope, in a week's time. But time will tell. Only time will tell that. And what happens with Alisana, if anything happens with him, what happens with incomings, we shall wait and see. But it's a delicate balancing act when you're talking about, let's face it, we're talking about a striker coming in on, you're talking a decision that's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds potentially, or costing hundreds of thousands of pounds in either transfer fees, wages, contracts, things like that. It can be an expensive decision, and it can be expensively mismanaged. And I know that's the sort of budget and thing we're dealing with it in football. And we can talk about the bloatedness of the squad in other areas, absolutely. But it is a delicate operation sometimes, trying to get the right player. And they've said along they want the right player. Like I, like everybody else, would love the club to be able to come out and be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more open. But sometimes with the negotiations that go on in the background, they take longer. And believe me, football agents are not easy to deal with. Do you know what I mean? So it's frustrating for us all. It is frustrating for us all. And which way it's going to go, we'll only know in a week's time from now.
Would you have any sympathy with Alisana at all? I appreciate we're talking hypothetically here, but you've been a pro footballer and you understand how dressing rooms work. So we've gone very close last year. Okay, when playoffs, got beat convincingly by Wimbledon over 2 legs, but we were in them and we were challenging for automatics up until the final 3 or 4 games, whatever it was. Alisana was a core player of that. Alex Bass was another. David McGoldrick was another. Before that, Dan Crowley had been very influential. When a senior player sees other senior players leave, does that in any way give them reason to reassess their own options at that football club?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think David McGoldrick, we saw how well they connected on the pitch, and from all accounts off the pitch as well. I think David McGoldrick going will maybe have just made things look a little bit different, feel a little bit different for Alisana. If this is the way it's going to go, he wants that. If he wants to move away, if he's got the option of a move away, then I think that might have, say, be the catalyst. He might have wanted that anyway, but you just never know what's in people's heads. But it can certainly affect you if you look around a dressing room and you think some good players are going here, and I don't think we're stronger. You might look at it and go. I think I'm better off elsewhere. I think my chances of looking good are better served elsewhere. It can change. It's certain how big of a decision it is, how big of a factor that is. Depends on the individual, obviously, but it can certainly be a factor, particularly when they're players of the ilk of David McGoldrick and you say Dan Crowley in January. When you're a striker looking for players to create goals for you, get your chances, make you look a better player. You want better players around you, certainly, and that might well have had a big say in his thinking. We don't know, because as of today, he's got a back spasm. That's it. He's not seeking that move as far as we know. But time will tell. So we'll probably find out this week whether he is or not.
Paul Sexton says, I think that whilst we have Jata, it's going to be difficult to recruit a quality striker, as they will know they're going to be third choice. Big Meech, Mr. Gagliardi, get your checkbook out, or rather the Reitz brothers check out and sign a striker. Any news on a striker, says Phil? Nothing. There's been a few on the on those ridiculous message boards today. I think Lee Undlove was a name I'd seen from Agent Trev. I don't know whether that's Chloe's granddad. I know it's not, but his track record isn't great. But that's certainly a name currently that seems to be circulating. Evening from Mansfield, says John Parr. Don't think Jata will be here. He seems to think he's on his bike, so to speak. James Moore talking about the game Saturday. 2 points dropped or a grateful point. Pre-match based on previous results, I think we'd have been happy with a draw. But based on the performance, I can't help feel it was 2 points dropped. Matthew Hoyland, mentioning Agent Trev, hardly the most reliable source. Richard Elvian, what happens if the transfer window closes and Jata is still here but remains injured all the way through till January? Colin Metcalf, I'll give it till the end of the week. But if we don't spend some of the transfer monies on 2 or 3 players, I want an explanation as to why not. 5 games and 10 points gone that we can't get back. Gazali, Paul, cheers for displaying my shirt rear centre tonight. Yeah, Jason, is he your brother? I tell you, he could have 20 goals in one season, but because of his Forest links, no one seems to quite like him in a not shirt. Richard Hawksworth. From Royal Marlow, loved MP's comments after the game. The owners need to get a grip on the forward situation, or it will be a turgid season, and they can all sit back and watch Gates go back down to 7,000. We're not signing a striker, you see, says Derek Flowers. Richard Elvian, Martin definitely sounded cheesed off in that post-game interview. Colin Metcalf, my thoughts as it stands: transfer window baffling, communication terrible. My hopes for the playoffs are not high. Sign some quality and prove me wrong, Notts. Rob Simmons mentions the rumour about Lee Undlove. Evening from Maddie Grant. Paul Topley, we've seemed to have struggled with a plan B for years. Bromley, like many teams, changed their game and we didn't. Capital letters is an interesting point we can pick up from Stel, from Greza. We have scored 6 in the last 2 games without Jata. Yeah, fair point. So is he? So he is not irreplaceable. Richard Elvian, club can't be held to ransom and sell for less than their estimate, just like they have done with other players. Ian McQuillan, has Jata been in the stadium on our home games this season? I didn't see him myself, but I was told he was there Saturday. Yeah, you saw him still?
He was. I didn't see him, but I got it on good authority. He was there. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
he was.
that's right. It's not like he's disappeared off the, gone to Gambia for a few weeks. He is in the building, so to speak. Colin Metcalf goes on, the lack of communication is just adding to the problem. This area has fallen well short on what I expect from our club. John Parr, agents can be great sometimes and a nightmare on others. They have the power, do they? Agent or club? Martin's clearly not happy with the squad, said Zedo. We aren't either, but saying that in an interview, not a good future employment plan, particularly when Roberto Gagliardi needs to cover his ineptitude, in my opinion. Let's just break off there. I'm up to 7:20 on the messages, so I'm catching up with you. I'm catching up with you, guys and girls. Stel, here's an interesting one. We've certainly not signed a lack of players this summer. Yeah, I think there's been a bigger churn of players than we might have reasonably expected, both in terms of the addition of paid-for sales and releasing of people like David McGoldrick. We talk a lot about identity. It's not always been easy to see exactly what Martin Patterson's identity was for Notts. I thought you saw a clear 45 minutes of kind of how he wanted us to play Saturday in the opening 45. The like of which I've probably only seen in the opening 45 against Newport. He bemoaned a lack of aerial height. He alluded to physical strength, that Bromley held the upper edge over us. If you look at our recruitment and you look at what Martin Patterson is still calling for, do you think they've been aligned particularly well this summer on the face of it, or not?
Well, at this point, the fact that we're questioning it, the fact that Martin's sounding a little frustrated at times in his post-match interviews, his pre-match interviews, it would suggest that maybe not. No, at this point, until these players that have been brought in either improve, put in better performances, show us what they were brought in for, and there's still time. Like I say, they've only had half a dozen games so far, and the team has chopped and changed. But until they do it on the pitch, then this question mark will always remain. And like we said about accountability in the structure of the club, if the recruitment, after a while is left with a big question mark over it, then we know where the accountability falls. Now, internally within the club, they could say, well, we bring players in. It's down to the head coach and the coaching staff to improve them players and get more out of them players. But that's a discussion for internally. Us on the outside, us that just watch the games and judge everything with our eyes, at the minute, you would struggle to say that recruitment has been a massive success. You couldn't do, and I don't think you'd get anybody, particularly in not of a Notts persuasion, to say no. It's been a roaring success thus far. But again, smallish sample size, 6 games. But no, it's got to improve. It has to improve. Bearing in mind the recruitment, just like the coaching, just like everything about Notts County, is set up for a club and a team that is aiming for promotion this season. So there are question marks, as I've said, for the last couple of weeks. We've had a better week, 4 points out of 6 from the 2 home games. Could easily have been 6, maybe should have been, but it wasn't, So until you actually see them results on the pitch, then the question marks will remain. And like I said, the accountability of it, people will start to point the finger. They already have started pointing the finger, haven't they, at where the accountability lies at the moment. But that's not to say that things cannot change, and it changes with improved performance both individually and collectively.
Yeah, it took Notts about 8 weeks to replace Stuart Maynard. Martin Patterson came in over a weekend. And look, there's a few sort of gazing into crystal balls here. Clearly, as you said before, head coach job at Notts County is a big job. Okay, I know we're in the bottom tier, but this is not, of the 92 clubs in professional football, a number 92, number 91, or number 90 job. Yeah, there's a good 20 to 30 clubs in an ideal world managers say, well, actually, I'd rather be at Notts at the minute with 10,000 gates than someone that's finishing 20th in League One or whatever. You kind of get the point I'm getting. So it's a great opportunity for Martin. Lots of people, right, say the right things to get a job. We've all done it. Right? And then when you get in, you try and like manage and create your own portfolio or whatever. Do you possibly think, Roberto, the brothers have been surprised in a way that the players they think and have told us are, unbelievable, Will Jarvis, Mia Traore, all those. Do you think they've been a little bit surprised that all these players brought in, and it appears, we can develop this point now about your 28 players, seem to be a hell of a lot of players that Martin is kind of condemning, for want of a better phrase, to a bomb squad right now that have previously been described as wonder kids, the next big thing, the next best thing, whatever.
Yeah, and look, this is a bit of a fallout and a side effect, if you like, of changing managers, changing coaches. I've said this for years and years, and this is not me advocating for saying Stuart Maynard should have stayed, either. But what happens is you've got a different pair of eyes, a different manager who automatically looks at the game slightly differently, and sees different things in different players. So somebody who's a star and a regular starter under Stuart Maynard might be not particularly fancied by Martin Patton or any two managers at any two clubs. They can have a different view of things. Now, where you talked about alignment earlier, and this is where I think at the minute there is a big question mark, is yes, there were a couple of signings made, weren't there, before Martin was appointed? Players brought in, so acquired with a view to, well, good players, the coach will get them to play. But like you say, with 28 players in this squad, yes, we've got some persistent injured players in that, so they're not all available every week. But we've got some players, like you say, you've mentioned them, Traore, Will Jarvis for two, but there are others who don't get seen even in an 18, or they might get a spot on the bench in the early part of the season, but they've not exactly been given many minutes, even though the results haven't been great. And that just sort of says to you that either the head coach doesn't rate them enough to put them in, or they're not actually as good as we thought when we brought them in. And again, somewhere along the line, well, somewhere along the line, but there will be conversations being had behind closed doors, robust ones where people are defending their opinions of players, because that's the nature of what happens. But the fact of the matter is, wherever the blame lies and wherever the fault lies or whatever, that needs sorting out. And that shows for me a little bit of short-sightedness, in terms of, well, if we recruit players without the head coach actually signing off players, there might be that problem further down the line. How many players have we got in this squad that were signed off by Stuart Maynard? If we're going to go down the route of playing a style of football and the head coach is interchangeable, i.e., if it's Stuart, if it's Martin, we're playing the same way. So therefore, the same quality and same strength of players, individual abilities of players, shouldn't really be a problem. They should fit from one coach to the next. But I think this has been more of a change. This has been, we're not playing the same way as Stuart. I think we can all see that this season. So suddenly you've got players that were brought in like last season and in January who were brought in for maybe a style of play for last season. Now this season, you think if we're changing it, the 11 players that have come in since the summer, have they been brought in for a slightly different style of play? If so, where does that leave the players that were here beforehand? It's ship up or, shape up or ship out kind of thing. You have to be adaptable in football. But that said, there are skill sets to things. So you can end up again with this bloated, sort of disjointed sort of squad where you've got players from a previous coaching regime and style of play trying to marry up with players from or a slightly different, more robust, physical dimension to the game, and you can end up in a halfway house where, okay, we've got some players who this head coach doesn't see fitting into the way he wants to do things. Yet the previous head coach thought, yeah, they can do. I can get something out of them, and that is almost just natural sort of, I say wastage is not the right word, but the natural sort of evolution of things from changing coaches. Now then, that's where you want your recruitment policy to be absolutely sit in parallel with it, where they can cross over, give opinions and go, are these the right players? Is that the player that you want? If that's happened, then the blame, whatever you want to call it, ultimately will fall down on the coach's side of things. Because hold on a minute, you've had say on these players. You said you wanted them. You said you'd get us. It's too simplistic. Say you said you'd get us promoted, but you said with these tools you can come in and get us promoted. That's what we want. That's the job you've got for. If that's been done without the head coach's say so, and he's been given some tools and gone get these players promoted, that's a different kettle of fish. And then for me, the scrutiny falls more on the recruitment side of the fence, because does the recruitment side of the fence, do you identify the right players? Have you identified the right players? And again, accountability. And I'm talking over a longer period than 6 games. I'm not, what we're sort of suggesting and alluding to now is based on what we've seen. But if in 10, 15, 20 games time, the results have improved, the performances have improved, and we're obviously where we want to be in the league table, then I'll go back to all these aspects and go, yeah, it looks like recruitment was good. Looks like coaching just took a bit of time, but he's got them together. He's got them to gel. He's got his message across, and it looks like everything's hunky dory. But again, we can only give an opinion based on where we are at the current moment in time with the evidence we've seen at this moment in time. And at the minute, there's question marks on both of them. But that's not to say them question marks are set in stone. It can change. It can change from Saturday onwards. It can always change in football. We know how long a week is in football, and hey, this week might be longer than most.
Scott Taylor, last season, we apparently, allegedly, had a budget for significantly higher standard of football. Somebody please explain where that so-called money is, because the window has been a club's settling for League Two, mid-table League Two. He said he's not happy. We've gone for quantity, not quality with our signing, says Derek Flowers. Spot on, says Ian Cooksey. Adam Kent. I like Cal Roos. I like his chant that sounds like booze, and he shows passion in bucket loads. But he hasn't yet filled me full of confidence at times, playing out from the back. Early days, question mark. Who else have we got? James Moore. How much of a difference would having Didsey in the team so far this season have done? I dare say we'd have a lot more points on the board. Goes to show you can't just replace quality like that. Colin Metcalf, if we don't back Martin Patterson with the tools to do the job, someone else will gain the benefit further down the line. This will be yet another missed opportunity, in my opinion. Ian Cooksey, if/when Martin departs, we cannot take 6 to 8 weeks to get a replacement this time. It's a little bit further down the line. Hopefully not at all, Ian. Big Meat. Barry Cotter, he reminds me of Jekyll and Hyde. 1 minute, amazing. The next, lazy and giving the ball away. Andy Easom. Adam, that's Hassel, BBC Radio Nottingham, asked the whereabouts of Nest, Traore, Jarvis and Robertson. And without saying it directly, we can draw from Martin's answer that they aren't necessarily in his first team plans. I'm paraphrasing there. ZO has to be a concern. New manager, bad start, very well documented new strategy board. I'm not sure that's an attractive package for a potentially quality signing. 3 managers turned us down, claims Derek Flowers. Okay. Start a positive. Let's have a positive. Matthew Dennis. Strikers critique. What are your thoughts? I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Anyone that scores 4 goals in a week's got to be happy, haven't they?
Oh,
As a strikers
absolutely.
are
Yeah.
always a bit selfish with the goals, aren't they? You know.
Oh, okay, absolutely. And look, I'm hoping this week that he's had is a microcosm for not season this season because first couple of games, yeah, look lively, but nothing coming in front of goal. Uh, and then, like anything, confidence is massive in football. You can look a different player with confidence, and for strikers, obviously goals. And 4 in a week is a fantastic return, and hopefully it can continue. And different spreader goals as well. A couple of headers in there,
Yeah.
poacher's
Good
goal,
headers.
and
Good
then
headers.
one where he sort of made it of himself. So he's a willing runner, and he's done fantastic. Fantastically well. And isn't it ironic and typical football chat and all this sort of stuff? We've spent the first 40 minutes and probably the first 5 weeks of the season talking about the woes of Notts going forward. We've scored 9 goals in 5 games in the league. We've got the division's leading scorer, and all we're doing is talking about how we're lacking a centre forward.
Yeah. It
You
might
could
have
argue
something to do with only winning 1 game as well, Stel, to be fair.
absolutely, but you could argue that stems from the other end of the pitch.
Yes.
So and that's another conversation. But I'm just saying that's the irony of football, isn't it? The fact
Yeah.
that we're bemoaning strikers and we've got, I say, the leading scorer in the division, and yeah, credit to him, absolutely credit to him because when results aren't coming your way. You've gone into a new club. You want to get your first goal. You want to get that first win. You want to, feel like you're welcome. You're not daft. You know the murmurings of the fans. You know what people are saying about you. More so in this day and age than ever before because it's out there for you. Everybody will give you an opinion. Like us two idiots here. But you've got to keep focused. You've got to keep your belief even when it's not going well. Even if it's not happening for you on the pitch, you've got to keep that belief. And it can be difficult at times, but if you've got that real belief, it'll come. You do the right things, you prepare well in training, you look after yourself, then you back yourself, and it will come. And credit to him, say, what did he go? 2 games in the league without scoring. It's hardly a crisis. So this can happen, but you just don't want it to happen when you first go to a club. Now he's got four goals in the week and everybody's going, well, who's missing Alisana Jata at the minute? So he's been fantastic. Pleased for him, really pleased for him because I know how important it is for strikers to get them goals as well. And like I say, let's hope he continues because he certainly looks like he knows where the back of the net is. And I say a couple of headers, poacher's goal when the keeper fumbled it, Shrewsbury, even though I wasn't there, I saw it, and then a fantastic goal for the first one on Saturday. Um, Tells me he's got a bit of everything about him, and I know Martin's sort of trying to keep him G'd up by saying he's maybe not a 90-minute striker at the minute, but he's having to do a lot of spade work all by himself, and he's doing well. So, like I say, long may it continue. When you're in a run of form, you want it to carry on as long as possible, obviously.
Ian Cooks, he says, Matthew Dennis runs through a brick wall for us and deserves his goals. Just hope the back spasm doesn't become contagious among our strikers. There you go. And he adds, a lad called Scott banging him in for South Shields, worth a look. Yes, a little bit down the league ladder, but it's great. I know that Kedwin's dad, Colin, is a regular listener and contribute to the show. So I think we're all delighted that Kedwin's kind of back home on a home soil and doing very well at a very ambitious National League club as well. I think, there's a few quid going in there, and I know that they've got kind of a plan ultimately to try to get into the Football League. So maybe Kedwin can be one of the figureheads of that. Colin Metcalf, microcosm, has Stell been playing Scrabble? Never judge a football and say, hey, Wayne Rooney.
Hey, just don't ask me to spell it.
I was going to say Colin's not spelt it right, but he has, to be fair. Andy Eason, Jacob Beddoe not looking quite reaching the heights of performance he did last season. Yeah, defensively, Stell, do you attribute conceding goals as simply as a change of goalkeeper, or is there more to it than that, etc., etc.?
Far more to it than that. Far more to it than just changing your keeper. Yeah, I mean, I said on Saturday the second goal. I don't think we can do too much about that deflect. You know, they
Yeah.
blocked the free kick. They cleared the ball with a bit of height and a bit of distance. Lads hit it well. Took a deflection. You know that can happen. There's not loads you can really do about that from a technical aspect. The first goal, however, horrific. You know, so there's loads you can do about it, and that is not just down to the fact we've got a different goalkeeper. In fact, it's nothing to do with the goalkeeper. The first goal, you know, it's just a horror show of defending. And I think, you know, I would echo that. I think Jacob Beddoe last season was superb, you know, well within a shout for player of the season. Certainly one of the, if not the most consistent players last season. And I think just maybe him individually has been, I say, unsettled, just not reached the same levels quite, you know, and that doesn't help with having to chop and change the team. He's played with, you know, he had a decent understanding with Matty Platt and Lewis McCarry when our Sonny Al Joffrey's come in, Rod McDonald's, you know, had the last few games there. Obviously, Matty Platt's now out injured. So you have to get used to players all around you and different wing backs as well who do different jobs. So the left wing back on his side, you know, you're getting used to somebody who's maybe doing covering slightly different areas, wanting the ball in different places, making different runs to what you're particularly used to with other players. So again, these understandings just take a bit of time, and if it doesn't happen straight away, can just unsettle you, just upset you. So, you know, like I say, we've conceded too many goals. That's the biggest criticism. We 9 in 5 in the league is fine. You know, that's a decent return, really. I know the Shrewsbury game skews it a little bit
Mm.
statistically, but the fact that we've conceded 8 in 5 goals, that's not good enough. You know, that does need to improve. And it's everybody. The old adage, you attack as a team, defend as a team, is true. You know, in this day and age where everybody has to work their socks off, everybody has to do a job in and out of possession of the ball, then yeah, we've got to be better like that. But I think there's been a few individual errors, you know, and maybe one or two individual errors at times that have led to goals. And so that first one on Saturday was a horror show defensively, really, where you could put two or three things right about it, you know, or should have been better. And again, that adds to Martin Patterson's frustration because, you know, we're talking slightly differently, aren't we? If we have 6 points from the two home games, you know, 4 points isn't a bad return
Absolutely.
at all. But
7.
but
Yeah.
6 points from two home games, and you just defend that first one better, and that's possibly what we're talking about. So look, if I'm not a believer in if buts and maybes, I believe in what you see, and we've just got to cut out them sort of sloppy errors, if you like, defensively, and get better. Like I say, we're talking about attackers, but the area for the most improvement is still defensively, out of possession of the ball.
Gresham Maxwell for the Wotton shirt, one of the many 5 number 9 shirts I've got behind me, subtle there. I'll trade my Max, bloody hell, this is going back even for me. I'll trade my Max Bygraves album, Tulips from Amsterdam. Yeah, I remember that, crikey. And I'll treat Stel to a new dartboard. There you go. No, is the answer to that one, but very innovative. Paul Cuthbert, change of keeper has surely got to reflect in the confidence of the back three. The defence used to know and expect the keeper to come and collect the ball. He doesn't rule the area like Bass does. Macca not in Millwall's squad tonight, says Ian Cooksey. Carabao Cup. Of course, we're never in that second round, are we? Let's start the conspiracy theory here. I think we'd be all quite happy if Macaulay Langstaff came back, wouldn't we? But not so sure. Not so sure. Richard Elvin, Rouge catching the ball more from crosses. I did notice that the first one he came out right on the edge of the box and clattered. Was it Omar Sawunmi? Got the ball. Well done. You know. What else have we got? Let's move on to. Oh, we've nearly done an hour. We haven't mentioned Tranmere yet. So Tranmere still 1 win in 5 in the league. Tranmere went there opening day of last season, I think 0-0.
Yeah.
Charlie Whittaker's not going to haunt us, is he? He's been playing, and I think he scored at least one. I think for them.
I think he has. Yeah, it's the curse of the former player, isn't it? Hopefully, not going to strike this Saturday. Yeah, they've got off to a decent start, haven't they? Unbeaten. They've only played 4 games in the league.
Yeah.
2 wins and 2 draws. Look, it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? We go there with a bit more confidence, hopefully, than we've had, you know, since our last away game. up at Barrow. So, look, I'm expecting an improved performance than what we saw up at Barrow, certainly. It'll be a tough game, though, because they'll be full of confidence. They'll believe they can win the game. But again, you've got to go into it. It's early part of the season. The league will take shape after 10, 12, 15 games, not yet. So, yeah, teams can get off to strong starts and you see them slide back down. Teams slow starts, they climb the table. We see it year in, year out. So it'll be a tough place to go. Andy Crosby as manager up at Tranmere. I say players with confidence. Amari Patrick scored a few goals. I think he's got 3 so far. But he played against us last season in a 0-0. So look, it's like any game. It's going to be tough, but Notts have got to concentrate doing what they do. We need a 90-minute performance, is what we need.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we've said Saturday again, very good. I thought first half,
yeah.
decent, really, really decent. First half, notwithstanding the defensive howler for their first goal. But then second half fell away, couldn't get back to the same levels for whatever reason. And I know Martin again has mentioned about recruitment, not having that second striker on the bench to bring on, and he thought he spoke quite candidly about that, where he would have gone 2 up top.
Yeah.
Whether that had made any difference to the score, again, we'll never know, if buts and maybes. But I thought he was honest with that's what he would have looked to do, which is an attacking option to take against the team who's chasing the game, sort of thing, chasing a goal. So interest in that. Now, when he gets a striker in the building, we'll see if he's true to his word and does it on them occasions. We are ahead again. But yeah, I think it's a tough game, tough place to go to, Prenton Park. But they'll be bang up for it. And I say 4 points out of 6. They'll believe they can go and get a result now. Time to go and get the first win on the road and get me up there with Bish the same amount of points.
Yeah, Paul Toppy mentioned this earlier as a question, and us as civilians, you kind of look at the 90-minute Saturday. Bromley finished stronger, unquestionably, and we kind of dilute that down to Bromley were much fitter than us. On the face of it, they look to be running much more strongly. What would your thoughts be about, say, fitness of respective teams and that, or is it just because Bromley were playing better and we lost a bit of confidence and sat back?
Yeah, I don't think I'd be horrified if it was fitness, because I don't believe they've had an easy pre-season. I don't
No.
think Martin Patterson's the sort of coach that will let them away with not
Yeah.
doing the hard yards. In fact, it was one of the first things he said about his teams. He wants them to be the fittest in the thing. But this is the difference. There is a difference between fitness and the momentum of a football match and being on the front foot, and it's a different sort of bravery or ability. Is that you're 2-1 up, so the opposition, I've spoke about it loads, they take the attacking option.
Yeah.
They've got to gamble a little bit. You can call it cheating or whatever, but they've got to run forward. You've got to go forward. So your wing backs run forward, your midfield players make that break forward because they need a goal to get back in the game. And conversely, on the other side of it, you can mentally get into that bit of, we've got to protect this lead. So just sit back. By virtue of sitting, doesn't sound like you're doing much, does it? You're not running around. You're sitting back as opposed to running forward. So it looks like they're the fitter team, when in actual fact they've got the momentum. They're making them brave decisions of going forward, and that is probably where Martin Patterson's saying, "Look, I wanted to counter that by making the brave decision of putting a second striker on, and we will go forward and believe we get the third goal, give ourselves that breathing space, and win the game." Do you know what I mean? So it's. But that can easily translate itself to we look like we've run out of legs. I don't think it's that. Certainly not 6 games in this. If that is the case, and the stats say, there is absolutely no excuse for it, but I don't think that's what happens. It's more of a mental thing of, you think you've got something to protect, and it's very difficult to change it. They get the equaliser. It's then very difficult to then get out of that mindset to then get back on the front foot and do all the forward running, because we saw, was it Dinanga who missed that header from 3-4 yards? You still think, oh, right, we could end up with nothing here. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place kind of thing. But that's football ability for me, decision making and ability to be a really top team, to be a really good team at whatever level. No matter what the scoreline, you've got to make the right decisions. I talk about decision making all the time. And the right decision sometimes is not sitting back. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have to soak up pressure. Sometimes you have to say, do you know what? the team is playing well at the minute. We've got to just sit in a little bit, put out space, stub them out a bit, and then we'll look to counter attack or, hit them in a different way. But in that occasion, it's not fitness. It's not fitness this early in the season. It's more about that mentality, that maybe a bit of belief as well. If we'd have won the first 4 games or 5 games and we'd been on a run, we wouldn't be worried about losing something. But because you've only got one win, we're 2-1 up, we're 2-1 right. Oh, do we go forward? Do them wing backs really make that challenging run and go forward when they've not got the ball, thinking, oh, I'm leaving a hell of a lot of space and I've got to get back if it doesn't come and if we give the ball away? Do the midfield players really go forward beyond the front man, maybe? Really make that forward attacking option run? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes when doubt creeps in or a little bit of caution creeps in, you take the easy option, and the easy option is just to sit. It's not because you can't run. It's not because you're not fit enough. It's because you're mentally making a decision that maybe isn't the right one. If you could, have a timeout, have a think about it, and have a word in it. And what we needed Calaroos to have cramp, didn't we? Maybe, but that was it. But as Martin said, he wanted to make the change, but looked behind him on the bench with 7 substitutes, didn't see what he thought would maybe make that change, would give him the legs. So again, that's something for a conversation with him and the technical board about what to bring in before the window closes. But I don't think it was fitness. If it was, it's criminal.
Okay. We're talking a bit about Prenton Park. The consensus, I've not double checked this. Last time we won at Prenton Park, 2011, Gaz Ali is saying. Who remembers? That might have been the year. I think Martin Allen was in charge. We went there, if you recall. It threw it down with rain. We were 1 up at half time. Classic football, this, Stell. 1 up. Pelting down with rain. There's just a few puddles starting to form. So, of course, half time comes. We're winning 1-0. All the Tranmere ground staff come out and fork the pitch like crazy to keep the game on. Do they act us like? Not one member of the ground staff. The puddles are forming. And, of course, start the second half. Out comes the ref. Game off.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'd have accidentally got the groundsman to lean on the sprinkler switch and turn them on as well if you wanted the game off. Yeah.
That for me, it was just it was so funny. I vividly recall it. And of course, having been in the game, you understand. And all the Notts fans, hey, get the ground staff on. Hey, they're all having a tea break now. The Tranmere managers locked them in their little groundsman's up. You're not coming out to fork this pitch, lads. So I remember going there then. Sample size is small still. But counteracting that sample size, you've already got 1 or 2 of the big guns in inverted commas are starting to rack the points up. And clearly Chesterfield, MK Dons. Look, it is far too early to judge. A lot of players are saying, a lot of our supporters are saying this squad is not at the level of last year. Yeah. And certainly initial results would bear that out. I don't want to be negative here, but how far off do you think we are last season? You're not necessarily expecting Martin Patterson to win the next 8 or 9. What needs to happen to sort of get to mid-table, start winning more than we're losing, and winning more than we're drawing?
Yeah, look, it's always it's a fine line. Unless something's absolutely horrific, it's always a really fine line. For instance, confidence. We've spoken about the what difference confidence can make, belief can make. It can change, and you only need it to change, say, by a little. But that is not trying to sugarcoat it, because on based on what I've seen, I would agree with them people. The Notts fans that I've said that we don't look much more than a mid-table team at the minute from what we've seen. And the league table is for what it's worth, and it's not a lot at this stage. We are a mid-table team, or lower mid-table team at the minute. If you asked Martin Patterson, if you asked Roberto Gagliardi, if you asked anybody of the hierarchy at Notts, how do you rate the start to the season? It wouldn't rate more than a 5. Then they're not going to be kidding themselves or each other about how the start to the season has gone. So Everybody's feeling that same frustration. But honestly, believe me, it can change. And you just don't know what can make it change. A bit of belief, a bit of confidence. So I've had it in my career where you start the season badly and then all of a sudden something happens, that the belief happens, you get a result, whatever it might be, and it can turn. It absolutely can turn. So, and like I say, it's not been a horror start, but it's just not been great. Obviously, we've not picked up the points we need be. And again, there's that fear factor of, well, there's the two or three bigger clubs, well, bigger clubs, bigger than us, but big clubs with the bigger budgets have accumulated points, your MK Dons, your Chesterfields, like that. So you feel like we're chasing already, but long way to go. But there has got to be an improvement. There's no two ways about it. And like I've said for a few weeks, I still think we need a bit more creativity, quality creativity, and goals, and wherever that comes from, they might already be in the building, but it might have to come in the transfer window. And one thing we haven't mentioned about the transfer window is I think they've got to get a few players out as well.
That was my next question. So you mentioned very early in the show 28 players. The National League window remains that way. It isn't really a window as such for National League, is it?
Yeah.
So you, for instance, we could still loan players out after next Monday. But in the light of asking you the question about, how short are we? Where do you think we are in the grand scheme of things? We do own, in terms of incomings, other than free contracts, which is a bit of a lottery, or free agents, I should say. What do you need? What do you think we need to bring in by? I'll get there in the end.
So
By next
rearrange them
Monday?
words. There's a sentence
Yeah.
there, and what do I
Doing my
think
normal
we
Colin.
need
What
to
do we need?
bring in?
How many do we need, Stel?
Well, we don't need any more numbers, but I think we need 3 players. So I would want 3 in, 3 out, something like that. So that's what I'm
Okay.
saying in terms of, or maybe even more out, depending on who it is and what there is.
Yeah.
Like I say, for me, a little bit more creativity, bit of quality. I say Dan Crowley-esque. Easy to say just somebody like Dan Crowley and a centre forward who scores goals, but I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
No.
And another factor would be the injuries to Matty Platt and obviously Lucas Ness not been
Yeah.
fit. You mentioned yourself, didn't you, about maybe another centre half? Do we need another centre half? I think that depends on the severity of their injuries, the likely length they're going to be out, as to whether you maybe need to look at, even if it's just a loan signing centre half, but bring in a centre half in, to cover you, because like you say, we can send players out beyond this window, but we can't bring anybody in
Yes.
beyond next Monday. So you always need to cover for potential injuries. You cover, yes, the injuries that we've got now, but there are going to be more between now and when the window reopens at, Christmas, New Year time. So you've got to make sure you've got, main positions covered. And I know people have said about wanting another goalkeeper because after Kelleroos, it's 2 young lads with very little experience. So again, you always want more, don't you? You always want more. But if that means having to send players out to enable it to come in, then so be it.
Yeah. I sometimes get concerned when we talk about those players that you need coming in at this transfer window when they form a large component of the spine of the team. Normally, the better teams have a spine that picks itself. They play 40 games, and you kind of infill around them, don't you? For me, I think you need 2 strikers. Yeah, if Jata goes, and I think you and I disagree on what we think might happen, and we'll come on to that in a minute. For me, if Jata goes, I think it's 2. I think it's 2 strikers. Neil Warnock can never have
Yeah,
enough of them.
absolutely.
5 subs on the bench. He'd have no goalkeeper and 5 centre forwards. That was literally
Yeah.
how he did it, wasn't it? It's literally how he did it.
Well, that's it. Strikers, you can never have too many of them. The problem is, like I say, they cost more generally
Yeah,
than other people. And I agree with you. If Jata goes, he needs replacing, and we still need one more. So we need one more as we stand at the minute, but possibly 2 if Jata
yeah.
goes.
I think got it for me. You have to take it. I think you've got to get another centre half. Matty Platt out for, as I understand it, best part of 3 months. we are, Lucas Ness not available as I understand it at the minute. It's a fluid situation regards Lewis, because I'm not aware that we've had a definitive answer from the FA on any possible action against him. So if we take an injury, and we've always played 3 centre halves, the irony is, if one of our centre halves got injured, do you think we might finally play a 4 at the back on the basis we'd only have 2 out and out centre halves?
Yeah, we might have to. Yeah, we might have to. But look, I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. What we don't know is the length of time Lucas Ness has been out, but he seems to have spent more time. Well, he has spent more time injured than he has fit since he's come to the club. So, yeah, if he's out anything similar, then I think, yeah, I agree. You have to go and find somebody who can play that might be a big lump. Somebody who can play that central role.
Right, so we're winding the clock forward to 24 hours next week, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Is Alisana Jata still a Notts County player?
The $64 million question. I've got no information. I've got no information.
No. We're all
And we'll assume the back spasm clears up, so he passes a medical. I would edge towards no, he's not.
Really? Yeah, it's funny. Mate of mine who said last week, leading up to the Bromley game, he said, we'll know whether Alisana Jata is staying with Notts by Saturday. And I goes, what do you mean? And he said, if he's playing and in the team, he'll be staying. If he's on his bike, he won't be playing. And I thought, yeah. And obviously that's I lean towards him still being here. But I think it's more the practicalities of, you've only got 7 days for him to be sold. So you've got to have a club that wants to buy him. Yeah, there'll be some that want to buy him. I can't see the club selling him for less than 300, if I'm honest.
Now let me follow up that. I want him to be gone?
No. Permutations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I say, and this is it. You asked me a question. I would lean towards that based on what I think is maybe going on, but we don't know. I'd want. The club shouldn't sell unless they get an amount of money they are happy with. Absolutely. I think the spade work will have been done in terms of, is there a club willing to buy him, and the agent will be, that'll already be sort of sorted out and
works on the basis
done.
Here, the agent, has been ringing everybody up he can possibly think of, trying to get a club, and then trying to work out a transfer fee that he can then say to Notts, we've got a move for him. They're prepared to offer this.
I was going to say that
isn't it?
The clubs that would want Jata are not in question. It's just sorting out the financials, both for Notts County in terms of a transfer fee and wages in terms of him personally, and the agent's fee as well, which won't be inconsiderable. So would I like him to be here in a week's time? Absolutely, because I think we're a stronger team with him. I think he really could, as long as he's going to give it everything, he's not going to be protecting himself for this move next summer or whatever it is, and you've got to be honest, you've got to have these frank conversations.
Yes.
You've got to make sure that you're getting 100% player, not a 60% player, because, that's no good. So you've got to have some frank discussions. But they've got to get recompensed absolutely correctly, and B, they've got to get a replacement. They are absolutely as certain as you ever can be certain about recruitment, which you can't be, but they've got to be as confident as they possibly can that we're bringing somebody tried and tested and going to come in and be a straight replacement for him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that Alisana's agents took a bit of a hit, and I understand exactly why. His job is to get the best deal for his client, not for Notts County. So that instantly puts agents on collision courses with most football clubs, because their job is not to do the best deal for the club. Their job is to do the best deal for the player. So I don't think you can knock an agent in terms of trying to be fair here for that. It's whether Alisana considers his best interests to be staying at Notts County, given it's his first stint in English football, or whether he possibly looks abroad again. Because he is a fairly travelled young man.
Yeah, look, what he wants to do is purely down to him and his ambitions and whatever he sees fit. And look, we can have a very one-sided view on loyalty, can't we? Now, I've been a
Yeah,
player, and I say loyalty is great when it's being shown to you, and it's not so great when it's not, and that works from a club side and a
yeah,
player's side. So I've got no problems with him wanting to move if that's what he wants. And look, this might just turn out to be the most unfortunately timed back spasm that actually ever
yeah.
happens, but you know. We'll see. But if he wants to move on, then he's got absolutely every right to do that. If his agent wants to try and get him the best move and try and as you say, that's the agent's job. Like it or loathe it. And I don't think many people like it, but that is the agent's job. What the club can do, though, is say, well, you've signed a contract,
Yeah.
Honor that contract. That's what we want. And we want you to be 100% honest with us that you're going to be 100%, that you promised to be. You've took your wages, you've come in, you've done well, and we're glad of that. But we think, and they'll have had this conversation, I'm sure, with his agent and with him, say, look, you stay here and score 20 odd goals again this season. You'll go for nothing in next summer. All right. You're out of contract. We can't stand in your way. We can't enforce anything on you. And say 300,000, whatever, 400,000, whatever we might have got as a transfer fee, you tell your agent to negotiate that into your back pocket from your next contract because you've just scored another 20 goals this season. Okay. And that is what you've got it. Now, whether he's interested in that or not, hey, look, that would be down to every individual player's what they like, what they don't like. Because the counter argument is he stays and gives 100% for Notts and breaks his leg next April. And I'm touching wood, something of that ilk. Does his ACL next April. All that money and any loyalty from Notts potentially goes out the window when his contract ends, and they'll go, "That is unlucky," and he'll be going, "Oh, wish I'd have left, or wish I'd have forced this move through, or whatever." So everybody can always see a positive outcome, but there's always a negative outcome as well, and that's from a player's perspective and a club's perspective. So the fact of the matter is, if two parties want two different outcomes, only one of them's ever going to be satisfied in the end.
Indeed. Right. We've done plenty tonight. Thank you very much for listening in. Stel, are you gracing us with your presence at Prenton Park on Saturday?
I absolutely am. Yes, I'm up there with Adam on Saturday. So yeah, looking forward to hopefully first away win this season, and then like I say, that'll be 7 points out of 9, and you feel like the season's up and running, and hopefully this snowball, this slow build of a season can really start getting going, and it just lifts a bit of the gloom.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned right at the start of the vlog I did on Saturday that, and because it's a big if, had you beaten Bromley, you've played 5, won 2, drawn 1, lost 2. That's absolutely fine. It's perfectly respectable. It's perfectly respectable. It's just this psychological, I do it, we all do it. You then get the only 1 win in 5, 1 in 6 if you count the cup. And that kind of thing, oh dear, that's not very good, sort of thing. And you start to feel it a bit, don't you? You talk about the
Yeah.
mental side of dealing and playing with it. Yeah, like you, we need 90 minutes or at least 75 or something, and we're 2-0 up and concede 1 and we win 2-1. It's getting over the finishing line, isn't it? It's getting over the finishing line.
Absolutely. Yeah, it always is. But like I say, the longer it takes to come, you want it there. Like I say, yes, I want a performance, but would I take a scrappy 1-0, scrappy 4-3? As long as we win, the points are the most important thing. But yeah, you want the performance as well to be trending in the right direction, and for longer than the 45 minutes that they've shown on 2 or 3 occasions so far this season.
Yeah. I also hope, in a way, the club take a little bit of the heat out of Martin's presser. Because Thursday or Friday, we all know what Adam's first, second, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th questions are. Yeah. for me, it would be nice if someone else from the club or the club issued something that just clarified the situation with Alisana.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, you'd say everything, and he's definitely here and he's not going, and blah, 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 blah. That may or may not be possible. But I just think you need to take a little bit of that kind of responsibility and pressure on Martin. And I think lots of football clubs do this. Manchester City never ever talk about the 115 charges, right? The chief exec, the owner, they never, no, lawyers, we can't comment. Every other week at its height, Pep gets asked 20 questions about it, and the poor old manager there is trying to go through all these things that really have very little to do with him at all, and he's having to fend, and he's given the little sound bites to say, and while the other people above just no comment, no, we can't talk about that. And I just think you can take some of the pressure off Martin a bit, because we did that interview, didn't we, at the start of the season? And he's an intense guy, and he'll be thinking about that all in the back of his mind on today, tomorrow. Oh, Adam, Friday. I know what he's going to ask. I don't want him to ask it, but I know he's got to ask it. And of course, Adam quite rightly will then, depending on the nuances of Martin's answer, will then ask a supplementary and then ask another. And Martin, for me, is the sort he has to be a bit careful about not saying the wrong thing, which can very easily be done in a microscope, in a goldfish bowl that he's in at the moment.
Absolutely. But again, I think it's difficult to say too much before the transfer window closes, or before we've got to the conclusion of what it is going to be, because until the window closes, there is no certainty, or if he's gone before then, if he is going. But I think look, I hope so, because I like everybody. I like the club to be in contact and putting out news for the fans, and stopping any rumours, gathering momentum. But I do understand the difficulties during a transfer window because of the complexity of what's going off behind the scenes. So I do think, and I would expect the club to put something out, a little bit of a whatever newsletter, whatever you want, but an update after the window closes, which might dot some I's, cross some T's, fill people in on what's been missing, so far this season. I certainly hope they do it. I don't think there's any reason why not to once the window closes. And again, they can only ever be transparent to a certain degree because of confidentialities and things like that. But yeah, I would imagine maybe not too much can be said this week until something's decided, but after Monday, then I think you might get some information.
There's no reason, if Jata is training this week, why the club don't put a little bit of a video out, Alisana in training, and that goes out tomorrow, it goes out Thursday. That's instantly started to manage expectations, and Martin can say, as you've probably seen, he's been training this week or whatever, or as opposed to that firing that first bullet at him, because no one else has said a dicky bird.
But let's not forget, was it a year ago, Macaulay Langstaff was named club skipper.
Wow, yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, he wasn't at the club, so they might well put that out. If Jack is training this week, they might well put a video out. But again, that still doesn't stop business being done before Monday closes. So it's dangerous.
I'm not saying, I don't think you are talking about saying on Thursday, Alisana Jata is definitely not leaving. I just think you're giving some guidance as to his availability for Saturday, so that it isn't all on the head coach with them bullet questions fired at him on a Friday that clearly he's going to hate but knows they're coming.
Well, I would imagine if he is available for Saturday, then I think that there'll be no problem saying it. I think there will be no problem saying that. It's obviously, if not, then there's supplementary questions that delve into awkward areas and like I say, privacy and confidentiality issues and things like that. So look, we'll see what this week brings. It's going to be intriguing. Last week of a transfer window always is. So who knows? This time next week, we might still be going. We're about 8:30 now. What time is it? Not far off, but yeah, we might be going till 9 o'clock this time next week, depending on what happens.
Dear me, yeah. I'm just looking. Some of the lads are watching. I think Celtic's gone to penalties. Has it? European Champions League qualifying round. If I'm doing the
I think they're in Kazakhstan, aren't they?
Yes, it's a long old
trip in Kazakhstan.
Oh dear me. Right. There's probably a few messages I can't read out there, so we'll probably leave it at that. Stel, thank you as always.
Pleasure.
It's not Merseyside, is it? It's the Wirral. The Wirral where Tranmere is. So look forward to catching up there. Thanks as always.
Yeah. No problem.
It could be a bit of a blockbuster next Monday. Yes, it could be, couldn't it? Nerves might be a bit raw, or we'll all be very happy. Let's take it from there. Thank you as always to everyone for your participation for tonight. We'll be back next Monday. Might do something on Friday Night Magpie Live as well, and the vlog from Tranmere on Saturday. Thanks everyone. Thanks as always, Stel.
Yeah, pleasure. Cheers everybody. Have a good week.
Cheers from both of us. Take care for now. Bye bye.